Hello, welcome to August. I think it's my first stream in August. Quick maths. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. Thanks for joining today. We've got a couple of games that are about historical warfare. We've got an airplanes game. We've got a battleships game. And yeah, it's the first stream of August. Hopefully people are enjoying the slightly more chaotic thumbnails that I've put up for this month's streams. We're doing historical warfare. Later on in the week, we're revisiting Echo Extract that I tried to play last week, but I hadn't set up properly. And then we've got space mining. We've got a stream all about gambling games. We've got a stream which is all dedicated to prototypes that have been sent in. So stuff where it's not really thematically or mechanically linked, but where the developers have said, hey, this is just a rough prototype. What do you think? That's later on in the month. A stream all about games in mundane settings, Chair Champions, Driving Test Simulator, Leaky Business, which is a game about plumbing, Plants and or Zombies at the end of the month, which is a stream with one game about plants and one game about zombies. That's the gag. So yeah, that's what we've got coming up this month. Trying to do 2 streams a week. They're all at different times because the kids are home from school. But yeah, that's what we've been up to. And today we're looking at Iron Dogs, which has been sent. The dev said it's kind of a revamp of a game that they played like back in the 80s. It reminds me a little bit of Sid Meier's Pirates and those games in the sense that it's doing simulation via lots of different mini games, which is a way of designing games which has kind of gone out of vogue since the kind of mid 90s. And I did a video on this a little while ago when I was talking about cinemaware games and how there was this tendency in the kind of late 80s, early 90s to make these games that were like collections of mini games. There was a remake of Sid Meier's Pirates, but the old pixel art one. It was like, okay, there's a mini game for sword fighting and a mini game for naval battles and a mini game for finding the treasure. And that wasn't just Sid Meier's games. You know, Cinemaware games were like this as well. And it's kind of a way of doing game design that has kind of gone out of favor, and you can kind of understand why, because you're practicing a different skill in every mini game, and that mini game where you, in this case, shoot a giant ant with a gun, it only shows up for 5 seconds, and then you don't do it again for 2 hours. So you can never really get good at these skills, which is generally like a bad feeling. But I think it can work for certain type of experiences, and if you think of experiences where you're actually trying to disempower the player, like, you know, how Alien Isolation works, because the AI is too good, so it disempowers you. You can disempower the player in horror games, and it kind of fits what you're trying to do. So this kind of this style of game, you don't get many of them anymore, and there's lots of reasons for that. I think from a production perspective, having all of these mini games is kind of interesting because it means you have to try and get the game feel right in all of them, which is difficult. But then on the good side, they're unconnected. So, you know, you might have some sort of resource that is relevant to this game and this game, but on the whole, these are different game scenes and they don't need to like carry lots of information between them. So there are kind of positives and negatives from a production point of view, but from a player point of view, it's more just the fact that, okay, when I'm playing this mini game, I might not have played it for a couple of hours and now I need to remember how to play it. So what do? Do you make it so simple that you can't go wrong? Do you re-tutorialize it every time? What do you do when your game is made up of lots of mini games which are all requiring different skills and are fundamentally like a different game? So we're going to check that out. We're going to check out Iron Dogs, and that's it really. I've just for those that are interested in procedural generation, I have literally just put up a post on the Patreon, which is a free post. I did this one free. Every 6 weeks or so, put my notes from the book I've been reading up on the Patreon, and that's usually paywalled, but this time around I made it freebie. So my thoughts on Mike Cook's book, Next Level Making Games That Make Themselves, is up on the Patreon now. It's a great book. It's got kind of like it goes through all of these different historical examples of games and how they use different types of procedural generation. So how one game uses Perlin noise, how another game uses a particular type of algorithm, all of that kind of stuff. So that's what I've been doing this morning before the stream. So yeah, let's check out Iron Dogs first. This is the game that has come from one of our patrons, so thanks for supporting the channel. And it is still in development, and like they said in their notes, they are still mainly focusing on game feel. Okay, we will do the other game first because I thought that had downloaded and it hadn't. We'll do Legacy of Sail first, and then we'll come back to Iron Dogs in about 30 to 45 minutes. Because Legacy of Sail is already downloaded. I thought they were both downloaded, but they're not. Yeah, very much interested to see what people do with this style of game, given those issues. And I try and look at the game first. You probably would have noticed more recently, if anyone's been watching the channel for a long time, I try and look at the game first and give some first impressions. Not necessarily just of the game, but of the kind of the game concept, you know, like what are the things that people are likely to struggle with this game. And when you've got a demo, it's like, what are the things your demo needs to prove? What are the things that people are going to come to your game skeptical of? I see this art style and I see, okay, I see Cinti assets, I think. Yeah, I see some Cinti asset guys. Nothing wrong with using assets, but immediately makes me think that maybe there's going to be some clunkiness here. Because again, that's not going to be everyone's viewpoint, but it's a set of assumptions I have in my head. When I see games presented in a particular way, I often tend to find that the game feel and the like basic interactions of does this feel nice to kind of click on things and do things in, tends to be more aligned with the art and design side of things than the tech side of things. So when I see like a game that seems like it's you know, programmer led and using stuff like Cinti assets, I tend to expect a lot of kind of clunk. I'm Brian. Welcome to Legacy of Sail. This is a solo developed game that was born out of my love for real-time tactical and RTS games. That's interesting because RTS games, you're doing the same thing all the way through, right? Whereas we've seen this game as like a collection of mini games. So again, how does that map onto like the skill journey of trying to learn a game if every scene in the game is a different thing? And I'm not saying that to be like immediately negative about the game, but that is the design problem that you always face if your game is stitching together a lot of smaller mini games. That's what I'm going to be looking at. And that's because that's what I think is like the common issue with games that are made out of mini games. And I talked about this when I did that video about cinemaware games and like bringing back dead genres and the challenges that gives you. Okay, demo scenario 1. We've got 2 scenarios and the Sapphire Passage. Okay, we're going to do it on medium difficulty with a balanced opponent. Let's launch. Yeah, we've got a very kind of stylized 2D map. I'm not sure this is really giving kind of Tudor period Age of Sail stuff for me, really. It looks a bit more like a fantasy world. Unlike these are, you know, these are European castles as well, which is not giving Caribbean. Okay, so what's going on? This is a real-time map, so we've got stuff moving naturally on it. I know I'm often a tutorial hater, but this is a... We not have any kind of tutorial, and you've already... Okay. How are we supposed to learn how to play your game? That's what I'm thinking here. I'm very often a tutorial hater, but the thing is, the more unusual your game is and the more it deviates from what people are used to, the more you're going to need a tutorial of some sort. So the enemy is going around capturing things, which is what these red things are. I would be fine with working the game out for myself if... let's quit this game and go back. I'd be fine with working the game out for myself if it was still in production. Okay, we've got a tutorial there. There we go. Yeah, I don't think it's a good idea, whether it's the paid game or the demo, to allow people to play the game without a tutorial, because it's so... You've got a set of things that aren't related to any game that anyone is currently playing. You need to force them through a tutorial. Well, every game of Legacy of Sail will start on the strategic map. The heart of the game is the naval engagement. So let's start by understanding how to win at naval combat. This short tutorial will give you an overview of the display and how you can command your ships. Okay. You have 2 ships entering from the north. These are mine. And the enemy has 2 ships entering from the south. Okay. We're not used to traveling down a screen from the top to the bottom, so there is not really any reason for arranging this way apart from if you want it to be deliberately confusing, right? So not just this game, this is relevant to all games. Most design decisions, you have an intuitive choice, which is what most people would do, and then you have other types of choice. And the intuitive choice in this case would be to start on the left or start on the bottom, because in games we're used to traveling from left to right in cultures which read left to right, or we're used to traveling from the bottom to the top because we're climbing something, and it gives a sense of progress. We're not really used to many games when you're traveling from the top to the bottom, unless there's a really good reason for it, like gravity in something like Downwell, in which case that's there because it's the unique selling point of the game and not because it's an intuitive thing. Now, you can do the intuitive design choice, which is to do what most people would do, and in a lot of cases that's the right thing to do because people will just understand it more quickly. And then you have other design choices which are to do something different, and you've got design choices where you do something different for no clear reason, and then you've got design choices where you do something different for the purpose of making something stand out or making it more novel or making it more interesting or whatever, right? So you've got like the kind of bold choice which actually achieves something, and the strange choice which doesn't really achieve anything. Starting us at the top doesn't really achieve anything. Like Emil just said in the chat, maybe this is for the tutorial only. Yes, but it's the tutorial, right? We need to do the most intuitive thing possible so that the player can focus on the new things they need to learn and not going, oh, why am I up there? That's not where I usually start in a video game. Here you see the wind direction and the wind speed. Okay, wind. Okay, that wind is going that way. I like the way this interface is done. I don't know how usable it's going to be. So the wind speed is low and the wind is facing the north. The wind is coming against us, I think. Your ship you're currently commanding will be highlighted with the blue outline. You can press tab to cycle through your ships. While on menu control, you can use A and D. This needs to type out from... This needs to be positioned at the top and type out while standing still. If you have this kind of type out text and it's moving as someone reads it, that's really irritating, okay? If you're going to do type out text, the first letter needs to stay where it is and everything follows after it. This is a really basic UX thing. If you have type out text that's moving, people can't read it as it's typing out, and you may as well not have it. While on manual control, you can use the A and D keys. Yeah, and again, the reason why we don't start at the top is heightened here because A and D are now the opposite of the direction that they would intuitively be when you're coming from the bottom, which is going to just slow down our learning. You can use the buttons highlighted on the right to issue orders to a ship if you don't want to directly control it. I think in a real-time action game, having these as text rather than icons or icons and text is probably a bad idea as well, because if I need to quickly choose what to do, then furl square sails, you know, I have to remember what furl means, I have to remember what square and slanting sails are. You know, there's just a lot of UX problems I see here before we're even into the main game. Speaking of cannons, here you can see the reload status of your port and starboard guns. The speed of reload is influenced by your crew quality, the difficulty settings, and how well staffed the ship currently is. You can use the up and down arrows here to change the elevation of your guns, and clicking on the cannon will fire your guns. See, if I wanted to tutorialize this, I would go, here's your guns, here's how you use them. And then the stuff about the reload quality, we tutorialize that at the point where you get a chance to get a new gun, you know? When you've got a lot to teach, focus on what we need to know at this exact moment. Try not to focus on things that only become relevant half an hour later if your player stays in the game. Later on, this will happen and you'll get this. No, like most people are going to switch off before you get there. And I know there'll be people watching this and they'll be like, you know, have some faith in people. You know, don't treat your players like they're dumb and they can't think ahead. They don't want to think ahead at that point of time. It's not treating them like they're dumb. It's kind of respecting their time. At this stage in the game, you know, I've downloaded a demo. I don't know if I really want to play the game yet. I don't know if it's going to be any good. You need to just focus on getting me to experience the good stuff in the game first. And this whole paragraph is not doing that. This whole paragraph is kind of endemic of some of the other stuff we've seen in the tutorial as well, of just like not really thinking of how tutorials usually work or what they're supposed to achieve. Oh, one more thing before we get started. You can always change the speed of the game up here. Okay. How is there a keyboard shortcut for that, or do I have to use the mouse? Okay, take what you've learned and go and... So tab to change... There's a... I can use the brackets to change the speed, so I'm going to put it really slow to start off with. Tab to change the ships. And then... See, I don't know what furl or hoist mean. It's fine to teach the technical language as part of the game, but I think it's probably a good idea to have imagery and iconography so that people that aren't here to learn specific naval terms can play the game straight away. Because I don't know what furl... I mean, I didn't know what furl meant, and then I clicked on it, and then when I see the word hoist, I'm like, okay, hoist is to put it up, isn't it? So furl is to put it down, but I had to work that out through process of elimination. Okay, let's speed up. Try to sink an enemy ship. We're going to slow back down again. Yes, I think of what the tutorial has taught me and think of what it's left out. And I think this is really just a case of like, you know, developer not really thinking about what the player actually needs to know. And instead just kind of explaining a set of things, explaining buttons. Like, we've gone through this and we've gone through the buttons and we said, this is what these buttons do. I cannot seem to turn. I have cannons on the left and right here. That's a cool little cinematic. I have no sense of which of these aligns with the blue or the orange side. Because when I'm on my ship, so is that's the right hand side because I'm facing downwards. So if I do that, I'm now shooting at my own ship. Yeah, this is this ship shooting at this ship. So we're looking from the deck of the right ship. I'm going to just blow up my other ship because that's fun. I mean, this is great. I love the idea that we're issuing an order to this ship and then seeing it carry out from the deck. So this ship's going to come round and then I can shoot from the left. And I'm not going to call them port or starboard because I can't remember. We're going to shoot from the left. And there we can see it hitting the other one. That's quite an interesting little kind of timing mini game. My issue at the moment is I don't have any sense of how to turn. Right, I can look at this set of instructions and I understand that all of these sails things are on some level to go faster. I don't know what square or slanting sails is. I imagine maybe one of these is on a particular side and I can steer the ship by turning one up or down. Like, but there's when I furl and hoist the sails, nothing is happening to indicate what effect that is going to have, right? So if it was that, I don't know what square or slanting sails are because I'm not a naval person. If I try and guess what these all are, and bear in mind, like, a real player at this point has completely checked out and they're just like, oh, I don't care. So I'm still trying to work it out because I'm trying to help you identify the problems with your game because that's what we're here to do. But by this point, a real player who isn't like a naval historian or something is just like, yeah, whatever, I don't care, this isn't fun. Right? So if I try and work this out through some sort of process of elimination, and I look here, I go, okay, maybe one set of sails is one side and the other set is the other side. So if I... the game is just full on, not letting me click stuff now. If I do one of these hoists, then maybe one of these would change, right? So maybe it would show that the sails were down on one side, so the ship is going to go faster in one direction and then it will go into its kind of turning circle because we've raised some sails on one side. But my understanding of these types of ships is they did steer with the wheel, they didn't steer with the sails. And I'm not seeing anything that lets me I'm not seeing anything that lets me actually steer. I'm going to continue. I'm going to try the tutorial again because I think really focusing on the tutorial here is probably where we'll get the most value. Oh. So we did a tutorial that forced us through a scenario. At no point did it check that we understood what it was teaching us before it moved into the next thing. And now we're in a completely different minigame, right? So okay, let's just see what this is, and then we'll go back and replay the whole tutorial, because I want to go back and pick apart the way that that naval battle tutorial is taught or not. I thought maybe those red buttons were the reload. Those red circles were the reload speed of the cannons, which we were told about. But again, remember, when we were told about it, we were given one set of information that we actually needed, which was this is reload, and then a whole paragraph about something we didn't need to know yet, which was this is affected by all of these other factors. So that's one of the reasons why you don't give people information, especially that early in a tutorial, that is not relevant to the current moment. Occasionally you can do that. Occasionally you might need to say, hey, the reason we're attacking this castle is to slay the dragon at the top. Like one sentence to frame the broader goal. But you very, very rarely do you need to explain a mechanic for now and then talk about the factors that influence it or something that might happen later on to upgrade it or anything like that. Just tell people what they need to know at that moment to play the game. I didn't know how to turn. And I feel like in a simulation of a naval battle, yeah, it's cool that I can choose which side to shoot my cannons on. That was reasonably intuitive. Although I had to like mentally rotate the ship to work out which side I needed to click on to get the cannon to shoot out the right side, which is fine. But we've already got a color coding system of this side is blue, this side is orange. So why don't we use that in the interface as well? And yeah, just not checking whether we've understood how that works. Like I couldn't turn the ship. I don't know if I was supposed to be able to turn the ship. It seems like I probably would. And I just remembered I'm supposed to use A and D to turn the ship, right? But because the game had switched to like trying to decipher this panel down the right hand side, by that point I forgot that I was using A and D to turn the ship. So I got there in the end. But again, if I'd been a normal player, I would have been using A and D to turn the ship like you told me in the tutorial, got distracted by some other stuff in the tutorial, got distracted by trying to work out what furling and hoisting the sails is, and by that point I've then forgotten that the keyboard is for turning. This is the process that I went through, and probably would have been worse if I hadn't have been doing this process of thinking out loud, because it's only by doing that I was able to come back around to remembering how I was told to steer. But because there are so many cryptic elements in that interface in terms of using naval language instead of iconography to say different types of sails and stuff that most people aren't going to know about. By that point, the player has lost some information, and it may not be how to steer, it may be something else, but this is why it's very, very important to focus only on what the player needs to know at that moment in time. No extra fluff about something that's going to happen and be relevant later on. Okay, let's see what the boarding combat is like. Your ship will always be displayed on the left and the enemy on the right. Okay. Ships will have a mix of officers mount. Yeah, okay. I can see that. Is this an auto battle? You do not need to control your marines. They will do stuff automatically. Okay. You can do this to control your other units. You can cycle through selecting units in each. Okay, I'm not sure what Marines versus units is at this point. I mean, you've... Who am I? Oh, I'm this... Am I this guy? So, these guys... There's some guys I can select. Oh... Oh, don't tell me what I know. I don't know the basics of boarding combat. I don't know the basics of boarding combat. You gave me 5 seconds during which time I was able to work out how to select 2 guys. And again, all of the interface is text buttons. You're making a real-time game. You need to use iconography in a real-time game because it takes too long for people to read text on its own. Especially when I don't know what a poop deck is. I understand I'm not the target audience because I don't know what a square sail or a poop deck is. But even if I was, I would still want an icon as a quick reference. There's lots of stuff in this game. It's like you've spent loads of time on this game. Right? I can see that lots of time and effort has gone into this game. But there are lots of places where you needed to spend more. And every time I see a button that has a tech piece of technical language from naval history on it, and not an icon, that's an example of where you have not spent time in the right place. I'm going to go over to the UI database for the 20 years ago remake of Sid Meier's Pirates. So it's the early 2000s, and we'll look for what I'm talking about here. You can scroll around the map by using, okay, feel free to try now. You can zoom in, Z and X. I can zoom in with the mouse, that's good. Click on one of your fleets. The green ship icon, the green ship fleets are yours. Okay. Full health, sail health, remaining cannons, remaining crew, remaining supplies. Okay. You can split the fleet. Click on one of the town icons. You can... So hard to read when it's moving like this. Okay, we go to towns to supply and repair. They have to be loyal to us, and you can capture the red ones, which was what happened when I skipped the tutorial. Okay. Brian, developer Brian, I'm really sorry, but this shouldn't be on sale yet. This is... I can see you've got all of the elements of a game, but this tutorial is just you thinking you know what the player needs to know. It doesn't really feel like you've sat down with someone and like watched what they struggle with and then designed the tutorial to focus in on the things that people really need to know at every stage. And the thing that is most clearly emblematic of that is the fact that every stage of the tutorial doesn't allow you to actually play the game. It tells you loads of stuff, some of which you don't need to know yet, and then it goes, okay, we're done with that, on to the next bit. It's like, no, I need to learn the game by doing the game, right? Not just you telling me how to do something, and then I do it multiple times, and then I understand how to do it, and then at some point you have some sort of check in place that goes, all right, they know how to do that. Now we can move on to the next bit. Maybe there's even some optionality there. Do you want to stay in this thing, or do you want to go to the next bit? Not, oh, here's the boarding battle. I'll give you 5 seconds of that, tell you what everything is, and then take it away from you so you don't really get a chance to interact with it. This is not how to build a tutorial, and this shouldn't be on sale yet. So in many ways, I'm kind of glad that we ended up playing this today, because I saw it had gone on sale, and usually if a game's on sale, I don't put it on Indies Under the Knife, because the whole point is we're looking at games while they're still being made. This is a game that is not finished. And as much of a tutorial hater as I am, you know, I don't like lots and lots of tutorial. I like to be able to play the game. This is emblematic of what happens when people think a tutorial is thing A and they don't really think about how games usually tutorialize themselves, because learning to play a game is being told how to do the game and then doing it for a chunk of time until you've secured that skill, and then moving on to the next bit and being told how to do that again in as few words as possible, and then being allowed to do that thing. The learning is the doing the thing. These text boxes that tell us how everything works, they're just there to facilitate the player knowing the next thing to do. But you have to let them do the thing, because that's what the learning is in the tutorial. The learning isn't the text boxes. The text boxes are there to guide the learning. They are not the learning. So let's have another go at the naval battle. Now I've remembered how to steer. So we'll skip these. We're coming in from the north. We're going to be steering left and right, and I can speed up and slow down. I know my keyboard shortcuts for that. I'm not sure why we need to know all of the different sail types or how they affect things. I would personally have just had speed up and slow down on W and S. I think that's probably how Sunless Sea does it as well. Like, if we're going to use A and D to steer like that, then having all the speed up and slow down as a click control down here doesn't really make sense when we could just be speeding up and slowing down with we could be slowing up and speeding down with the keyboard. Right, so we're gonna slow down the Dauntless and speed up the Victory. And then we're going to try and get around the side of them. So this has all of the sails furled, and this has all of the sails hoisted. It's not making much difference to our speed. And again, that's because one of the things here is you've started us off in a north to south scenario with the wind facing us. So we don't even actually get to feel the sailing mechanics. So again, this is a bad teaching scenario because I'm trying to learn how the knots meter works and how the sails work. And changing my sails barely changes the speed of the ships because we're sailing into the wind. The red circles above the mechanics, above the cannons, are the reload mechanics. So we're going to turn the Dauntless out to the out kind of that way. The Victory, we're going to try and pass them there. The Dauntless, we're turning to turn away from them, and we're going to try and shoot the Celeste from the right, which will be this cannon. So, but we're still not quite. If I get that way, I've got them both in the fan. So this is quite compelling once we get to it. Like this could be a good game. It's just the way it's taught and some of the interface layout is not really at commercial release level yet, and hopefully this will help the devs see that. I hope none of this comes across as mean-spirited, because I think once you actually know what you're doing, there's something quite compelling about doing this. But I would just switch the sail controls to being W and S. You know, there's a couple of different speed settings, and when you press forward on the keyboard, it raises some sails, and when you press backward, it puts them down. Just do it that way. It's you don't need to turn everything into like this makes it feel like a choose your own adventure, this stuff down here, and we have to read it every time. It's not helpful. Okay, we're going to fire out the right hand side with that. We've got them both over there, so cannon spread is very narrow. It's going all the way. It kind of fans across the whole of the ship. We can switch to the other ship, and we're going to fire out of the left hit again. Because we've got a blue and orange color code here, we should just have that on the back of the cannons. If we're going to have it anywhere, we may as well use it. So I don't think we're going to get them with this one. Switch to the other ship, and we're ready to fire again. Celeste is coming in close, so I'm going to start turning away from it, but we're probably going to hit it, and we'll fire out of that side again. Hopefully that means we're going to thin their crew a little bit before we get on the ship. Right, Victory needs to turn around, otherwise it's not involved and it's useless. We'll fire again out of the same side. Keep trying to turn as tightly as we can, and I just need to hit this every time it's refilled to get the best chance of damaging them before we get onto a deck battle. Jet Power Games said to take some inspiration from how Valheim handles sailing. It's incredibly intuitive and uses iconography to convey wind direction and sails. I haven't actually played Valheim. I think what you're pointing towards there could just be like a much bigger problem here which isn't necessarily, you know, does Valheim have a good way of doing this, or does this specific game have a way of doing it? It feels like everything that we're interacting with here has either been designed from scratch without referring to how any other game does it, or it's based on the original, whatever the old 80s game was called that the dev said that they were kind of inspired by here, in which case it's kind of out of date anyway and something better has been done since then. But yeah, it just doesn't feel... I think sometimes when you see this and you see like buttons that should have iconography which are presented as text and stuff like that, it does make me kind of groan a bit. It feels a little bit like a lost cause, because when I see that, it feels a bit like the developer isn't even recognizing why they would need to be icons in the first place, you know? Okay, so we have a very unsatisfying tutorial on an emotional level, because I've played it twice, and both times we get it to a point where one of our ships gets destroyed, and then we get forced into the deck battle, even though that's not really what happened. So it's kind of railroading us. And again, if you think of this comes up all the time, the difference between tutorialization and onboarding. Tutorialization is how do you show the player how to play and make sure that they know how to play. And onboarding is during that process, or during someone's first time in the game, how do you make sure that they're having a good time and they want to keep playing? And that can include the tutorial, whether the tutorial works, whether the tutorial is interesting, but there's other stuff as well. And if you're kind of just beating people up in the tutorial, they're going to have a bad time. Some people will be like motivated to try harder because, you know, they're just naturally more competitive or whatever. But a lot of the time, if people feel like a tutorial is beating them up immediately, they're going to not have a good time. They're going to bounce out of your onboarding. And that's not to say that you should mollycoddle people, but I think what it does I think the alarm bell it rings for people is like, oh, this person has made a tutorial where I can lose. Maybe that says other things about the kind of quality or balance of this game. So it's not just that people will get annoyed because they didn't win and they want the tutorial to kind of cheat in their favor and let them win. I think it sort of says something broader about the design philosophy of your game and how kind of player-centric the design is. And that's going to put people off in a lot of cases. Maybe not so much with historical simulation fans, but in that situation, it didn't feel like I lost because I didn't understand the simulation, you know? Maybe it was 2v1, fine, I get that, but... Okay, so it tells us a bunch of stuff about who we don't have to control. There was lots of stuff about how we don't have to control everyone, fine. Who do I have to control? How does that work? You don't need to do this. Don't tell me what I don't need to do, just tell me who I need to do. So, select poop deck, select rear, select railing. So this actually selects one of my officers on each of the different parts of the boat. Or just someone from any... Ah, okay. So I could just click them all and click attack enemy, I guess. Very unintuitive to have... Okay, we won that time. Very unintuitive to have a battle like this where we can see everything and then be selecting and targeting individuals using a thing at the bottom that doesn't tell us who we're selecting. Again, we've got loads of RTS games. They work a particular way. I understand you don't want the player to like control all of the characters, but that doesn't feel... Currently, it doesn't feel like a design decision that was made to make the game better for the player. It feels like a design decision that was made to make the game easier for you to make. And that's one valid reason to make a design decision, but it still needs to circle round into something that justifies itself in the game. I can't see any reason currently why this doesn't work using a normal RTS thing where I drag select some characters, right click for them to target a character or area. So that kind of leads me to thinking that this whole kind of clunky interface of select poop deck and I click it and someone from the poop deck gets selected and I don't know who. this whole interface feels like it was designed around, again, maybe copying the old game, which is from a very long time ago and has lots of like outdated stuff in, or maybe just doing what was easy to implement. Another slight problem I'm having with this scene is the guys all just look the same, which is a general problem with Cinti assets. If you don't do anything to edit them, and you use them as is, they've all got the same kind of physiology and faces and everything, and unless you do something to kind of retexture them or make them different sizes and stuff, it can be very difficult to tell them apart. They're very good for certain use cases, and other types of use cases, particularly top-down things with lots of actors on the screen, it can be very hard to kind of see who's who. Okay, we're going to do the strategic map now, and I'm going to click on my fleet. I'm going to actually get to move it this time, or the tutorial's gonna just stop in a silly place like it did before. Click on one of the town icons. Again, it's making me go through things without really letting me interact. So it's going, you know, click on one of the town. No, let me move my fleet first. Let me do something. Let me do something. There we go. So we've got ships. That's one fleet. There's a couple of fleets coming in from out there. What's that? It's like got some... Okay. Let's capture an enemy town. Don't mind if I do. The dev said there was an old game, I think with the same title as this. Let me just have a look. Legacy of Sail. So... Age of Sail. I think this is the one that they are basing things on. This one here. But again, you can take concepts from old games, but you need to really look at what makes sense in a modern interface. And I don't think that's a matter of like, oh, the audience has changed. I think it's a matter of the way that we design UI and UX now is much more scientifically informed. So when you look at where things are laid out on a screen, or how the controls are used, or where iconography is used, those things are informed by us now having a better understanding of how humans read images and make sense of things moving around on a screen than we did in 1996 or 1986. And a lot of that comes from, you know, neuroscience and cognitive psychology stuff that we'd known since the 60s or 70s, but it hadn't necessarily been applied to game design at that point. So there are lots of things that we do in modern interfaces which just make more intuitive sense, not because players are used to them, but because they are better uses of like how humans understand things and think. Yeah, we're going to move on from this one now because I just feel like I'm ripping it to shreds and it's not fun. But yeah, let's go to... Let's go and look at some... Where's the UI database? Pirates. Might not even be on here because it's even the remake of Pirates is from the early 2000s. And let's do Age of Sail, see if that's on here. Look at some interfaces for sailing. Okay. Age of Sail 2021. Interface. I can almost guarantee we're going to see iconography and we're not going to see loads of text boxes in action scenes, right? Because your brain cannot read. Yeah, look how little text there is on that screen. I mean, I know I'm zoomed out really far. The only text is numbers and the names of the ships. Whereas in that last game, all of the actions you could take during the combat were text boxes that were like verb the noun, verb the noun, verb the noun. It is too slow for your brain to read those. Even if it knows what they mean, the fact that your eyes see text will slow you down, and you'll like spend some time reading them when you shouldn't, even if you already know what's there sometimes. That's why we use iconography. Our brains read things at different speeds, and we can read the shape and color of things very, very quickly. When something is written as a word, we have to read the shape of the letters to put it together, and then put the combination of letters into a word and sounds and meanings of the word, which is a more abstract link to the thing, right? So even if we take out that issue of that game being full of technical language like raise and hoist, or was it hoist and furl, right? If you don't know what those mean, you've got the barrier of not knowing those technical terms, but you've also just got the fact that your brain needs to take the letters FURL and turn that into a word. Whereas if it's like a picture of a big sail and a picture of a small sail, the shape converts into the object into your head. It's much quicker. How to decide icon versus text button? Nearly always icon. Nearly always icon, especially in situations where someone is doing something in real time. There's no good reason to use text buttons for things that someone needs to understand in real time. The only reason is that you've been too lazy to find or draw or think of the iconography. And I know people get upset with me when I say things are lazy, because you're very much used to game dev channels where everyone is patting each other on the back for the effort they put in and stuff like that. But it is lazy, and it shows a fundamental understanding of like how brains and eyes work when they're dealing with interfaces. You know, when you look at all of these more polished games and you see these interfaces where there's hardly any text and all of the text is numbers or just the name of something, there's a reason for that. And it's not a taste-based reason. It's a human cognitive reason. The stuff we've got text. We've got the name of the ship. We've got some text down here to remind us what these buttons do, which hopefully after a little while we're not going to need because we're going to remember. But it's there if we need it. But all of the actual game information, like the variables and stuff, are done through iconography, color, shape, because it's the quickest thing to read and it's the thing we need to constantly monitor in order to play the game. When was the Sid Meier's Pirates remake? Yeah, exactly. The iconography doesn't need translating. That's also why if you buy a board game, they often try to keep most of the components, unless it's like a very story-driven board game, like the kind of Arkham Horror type stuff. But a lot of European board games, they will have the manual, has loads of text in. All the cards and stuff, they try not to have any text on because then they don't have to localize those components that are expensive to reprint. When is the 2004 interface? Yeah, you totally should have the tooltips. But again, this is what I'm saying. There's like a hierarchy of what's quick to read versus like a more verbose thing that you might need to in order to learn what the icon means. But you can't ever have an action game with like 5 buttons that all have 2-word sentences on, you know? Do this, do this, do this. See, here we've got a combination of both, right? So in the 2004 Sid Meier's Pirates remake thing, we've got a combination. So we've got the text of what the button does, and then we've also got the iconography behind it. So this is a bit clunky by today's standards, but this is the equivalent of like if we had the icon and the button and then you hover over it and then it gives you a tooltip, right? And it says, this is pause, this is full sales. That's probably what we would do generally nowadays. But even then, in 2004, they didn't think it was appropriate to just put the phrase full sales, attack, turn right, etc. on there, right? And presumably this maps onto the numpad on the right-hand side of the keyboard, and that's kind of why it's laid out in this way. But even then, in 2004, they used a combination of iconography and text, and that allows you to use the text to learn what the button really does, and then eventually just associate the icon so that you don't need the text anymore. Yeah, I saw this recently when I was nosing around on Steam. I mean, this is part of the problem, though. I think with a game like that, a game like what we just saw with Legacy of Sail, you always have to kind of ask yourself, like, I know it's not fair for people to compare it to this, right? You might say, okay, it's not fair for someone to go, Legacy of Sail game, right? That's what we were just looking at. Legacy of Sail, $10, okay? And again, I'm being a little bit harsher on this because it's a game that's been released and the dev thought that this was kind of at a stage where it was okay to release. Right. Corsairs, right? $11.99. Okay. It's mostly negative reviews. That's the new one. Okay. Where's the older one? But even then, look how polished that looks. And it's still got... Ah, there we go. Sailors? No, that's not it, is it? Is that it? No, that's an old one. Not Battle for the Caribbean. Corsairs Legacy? There's so many games with Corsairs in the name. Which one am I looking for? Corsairs 99. Well, yeah, I'm not going to look at 99 right now because what I'm trying to do is like a price value comparison, right? So this one, people annoyed with it for whatever reason. Let's go and find out why people were annoyed with it. I'm falling into a hole. I'm disappointed with this game. These are like old school fans of the 1998, 1999 one. Basically, they're complaining that everything's too fast. It's not simulationist enough, right? They turned it into kind of an action game, and they wanted it to be a slower kind of simulation type thing. So all of the negative reviews are from people who liked the older game. People who did enjoy it were the people who were like, yeah, this isn't the same as the original, but it's still okay. But let's have a look up here. This is selling for $12 or £12 or whatever. And graphically it is like a AA game. And regardless of whether or not people like it very much, you can see that they've kind of followed all the stuff I've been talking about, you know? The kind of actions and items and stuff in the game. This is a professionally designed interface. And even then, when they did their best, people are still pissed off with it. But willing to leave that many reviews. Whereas I think the situation you've got here is much more like, okay, we've got one user review. And I think it kind of comes down to, who do you imagine is willing to spend £11 or £12 on this, who wouldn't be more interested in this? Or, you know, some other current naval combat game. Naval action. There must be like one well-reviewed naval game from that time period. Pirates Naval Battle. See, that feels like it's more of a realistically priced game for what I see in the screenshots there. Again, this is one of the reasons why I don't play released games, because as soon as we start getting into like value calculations of, is this game worth what you're asking for, that's where things kind of get really goofy. Because this is a game that looks like a hobby game, right? And I don't say that to be offensive. It just does. Like everything about the mixture of art styles, the typography that's like really big, and everything looks a little bit like it was made in PowerPoint when we're in the 2D scenes. And then we've got Cinti assets. We've got all of this stuff that just kind of screams relatively low quality and could be charming on its own if it was presented in a like deliberately goofy way, but it's presented as like a historical simulation, right? And it just all looks a little bit clunky and mismatched. And then we're asking the amount of money for it that I would expect from like a AAA game or a AA game that has quite a lot of content in. And yeah, it just doesn't feel like there's a real grasp on reality here in terms of how this appears as a product to someone who wants to come and play a game like this. Yeah. Put it down to like $3, move on to the next game, but this isn't a $10 game. I don't know how people calculate those things, but I think this is why it's helpful to be a gamer first and a game dev second, because making something like this and asking for like $10 or $12 for it just shows a lack of basic empathy with with people playing games and like how they value things. What's Caribbean Legend? That's like a... Yeah, see, that's only slightly more on sale, and that's like a sandbox RPG that has sailing and third-person RPG stuff in and looks pretty. Emir, like I said at the start, basically I had it in the queue ready for this month before I realized that they were releasing it this month. So, and also it kind of matched up well with Iron Dogs. So we're going to check out Iron Dogs this now, which is whose game is this? This is one of our community members' games. Iron Dogs. So this is Jet's game. It's going to eventually have multiplayer modes, but at the moment they're focusing on just getting the game feel right. Okay, cool. So yeah, I think the meta level problem with the previous game, if we want to move on from the specifics of that project, it was just the devs bitten off more than they could chew. And I think also they're doing a passion project because they had a game they really liked and they want to recreate it. And they're focusing on like, what does that game need, and not like, what can I do? What can I execute well? And I think it really bothers me a lot when people tell people what game to make. I really hate it because I think what that kind of fundamentally misunderstands is things are made by the people who make them, and whether those things are good or not are largely a function of, is that person equipped to make that game? And there could be lots of things that factor into that, right? If you try and make a Metroidvania or some sort of character-driven action game, the quality of that game and the chance of success are going to be largely dictated by your ability to make something that looks cool and has cool animations and world building and characters and stuff. So trying to translate that, a lot of people will translate that into the advice that no one should make one of those. Don't make a Metroidvania. Don't make this type of game. And it's like, well, no, what the advice is, don't make that type of game unless you're an artist or you've got an artist. But I think what tends to happen is the hobby dev space and a lot of the kind of YouTube game dev stuff is aimed at solo developers who have learned a little bit of the technical side of things, don't want to learn the artistic side, which is absolutely bizarre to me because it's a big part of what makes video games cool. And so they want people to tell them what's the easiest thing for someone like me to make. So I've had various conversations with people recently in our Discord and stuff where they're like, I am so sick of everyone telling me to make an incremental game. I'm not interested in them and I don't want to make one. And it's like, yeah, but that's because the reason there's this kind of concept of the Steam meta and what game you should make. It's all based on what's the best advice for the least skilled person? What's the best advice for someone that isn't invested in like doing the Toby Fox or the Eric Barone thing of like actually skilling up in the areas that they need to in order to make the game that they want to make, right? And most people aren't like that. Most people aren't like, well, I want to make this type of game, but it requires me to learn this sort of art, so I'll learn this sort of art. Most people don't do that. They look for shortcuts. So when people are kind of creating this larger discourse about what type of games to make or what type of game is easier to make, because they want that discourse to be like, to sound correct to the largest amount of people, they aim their kind of advice and the things they want to say at the largest group of people, which tends to be the kind of laziest and least experienced group of people, when in reality, like the success of any creative project or any business is really more to do with self-awareness and thinking, okay, I've got 10 possible ideas for games in front of me, and based on what I know about myself, not the market out there, I mean, that will be part of it, right? There'll be certain things that are just not worth making because no one cares about it and no one wants it. But a lot of the chance of success of an individual project comes down to you being self-aware about what you can make and what you can achieve. And if your goal is to make some sort of complex real-time simulation game like we saw with that last game, and the idea of like sitting there drawing icons or spending time finding icons to properly represent actions on the interface, if the idea of doing that is boring to you or something that you can't imagine yourself spending a week doing, then you're not the right person to make that game, right? And I think that's what it often comes down to. If you read Derek Yu's old blog post about how to finish games, one of the things he says is start the right games for you. And I think his criteria are, what are games that you enjoy making where you enjoy the process? What are games that you like the idea of having made? Like a game that you would be proud of if you made it. And I can't remember what the last one is. But that previous game that we looked at, it felt like a game where the person liked the idea of it and they liked the idea of having made that, right? They would like to be the person who made Legacy of Sail. But what we saw in the game didn't really reflect the idea that they were the right person to make that in terms of like enjoying doing the bits of development that that game needed in order to succeed. That's why it had this clunky interface that lacked iconography. That's why it had mismatched art styles between the map and the Cinti assets in the 3D stuff. And people don't like hearing that sort of stuff because people want the answer to be something out there that they can just grab from a expert and put in their brain, and then they're like, right, now I know what to do. They want to be given instructions. The best instruction is kind of know thyself, and people don't like that sort of thing because most people are followers and not leaders, which is fine. It's fine to be a follower, but it's also fundamentally incompatible with making creative work or starting a company based around you making creative work. Okay, let's start the journey. Should I be... there we go. So the controller focus on this menu feels a little bit off, and I don't know if it's because I changed the screen size, but that start journey doesn't... Oh yeah, it's okay now. When I had it smaller, it wasn't going in the right place. There we go. Yeah, learning Matrix style would be amazing. It has been a decade... Oh, a pirate through and through and a beacon of hope to the common dog. Unat took them away from the world in the time that's passed. Many have attempted to take up this pilot's old mantle to become legends themselves. Philippe Lima, I just want to respond to what Philippe said at the top. He said, I like incremental game. I want to make an exploration horror game. Nobody wants to play those, Saj. Stop listening to people that tell you what people want to and not want to and don't want to play. Go and look at Critical Reflex. Go find the publisher Critical Reflex on Steam. Look at their list of games. That is a publishing company that only really invests in indie horror games. And there's clearly a market for it because otherwise that company wouldn't exist. When people tell you there's too much of something, they're not telling you there's actually too much of something. They're just telling you that they don't like that thing. And when people tell you there's no point in making thing A because thing B is more popular, what they're usually saying is Thing B is more popular because it's like a simpler thing that is like a no-brain game. Yeah, no shit. Like Candy Crush is more popular than like a bunch of big AAA games. That doesn't mean that every game developer should make a match 3 game. It just means that casual games are more like accessible to more people, and that's why they have a bigger audience. That's also why incremental games are more accessible than like horror games. And horror games that don't have any puzzles in are like more accessible than horror games which have puzzles and fighting in. And that's why if you look at all the horror games, the ones that are successful are the ones that require the least of people. That's just a general game design thing about the difference between a game being casual and a game being hardcore. And if you want to make games that have unpopular elements in, you can do that, and you shouldn't let anyone stop you from doing that because they're like, oh, you have to make this one genre because that's the most accessible thing that has the largest audience. You're just fighting over scraps at that point, and you may as well just, you know, make mobile games with ad-driven revenue in, if that's the way that you think about making things. Sorry, back to the game. No more game dev meta business bollocks for today. UNAT has done most of the work in preventing these freedom flyers, including one pilot in particular. Every dog has their days, and while being imprisoned for what feels like weeks, it isn't Loki's. His future, however, may have a golden lining. I think we're doing like Porco Rosso with dogs, aren't we? UNAT radio broadcast garbles static and an unrelated weather report. Hope it rains, Loki sighs. A radio squacks and screeches, then goes silent. Again, can today get worse? The base's sirens and alarms start blaring. Loki is faced with a single UNAT guard with golden shaggy fur. I could probably take this guy, just need to wait for an opening. On your feet, prisoner, you're being relocated. Follow close and quickly. Loki follows unsure, but is enjoying not being in the cell. The guard leads them through the chaotic base while alarms blare and security scamper around. But this guard seems unbothered and focused. Keeping sure Loki still follows regularly, they glance and smile at Loki. It seems to put him at ease for some strange reason. It was warm and welcoming, but also felt safe. The pair finds themselves at one of the exits of the base, and the guard stops. I'm sorry, mate, but couldn't you put this scarf on your head, and if anything happens, cover your eyes for me? The innocent look again. Loki complies, and they round the corner, straight into a security blockade who halts them. Stop right there. Don't you know the base is in lockdown? Prison breach. No one leaves. Awkward pause as the mysterious golden-furred guard just smiles with a knowing look. I think if you're going to have this much dialogue in a game like this, you probably will need to change the backgrounds occasionally. I understand it's quite early on in the process and you won't be there yet, but just thinking long-term, if you're going to have this much setup dialogue, you might want to like just kind of change the illustration in the background or something like that. It's a little bit long either way for people that have shown up for an action game. Again, when you think of the games that get away with doing this, remember, if you're basing, and I'm biased because I don't like reading a lot of story before I get to the core of what a game is doing. And I think a lot of the time when games do that and they get away with it, they often have this like massive brand power behind them, which makes people tolerate it. So don't base what your indie game is doing on like what a Star Fox game does or what a what's it called? Thingy. I can't remember the tactics RPG thing on the Switch. Fire Emblem. Don't base your game on like what Star Fox or Fire Emblem is doing in terms of the balance between the story and the gameplay, because those are IPs that people are so invested in, and I think in the context of a smaller indie game, it's better to do it later in the game when people have got a feel for what the game is and whether they really want to play it. They wink at Loki, who receives the signal loud and clear. We're gonna get busted out of jail. He quickly covers his eyes with the scarf just as the golden guard reaches into their satchel and pulls out a shiny red ball and proceeds to chuck it down the hall in the opposite direction. Wonderful. Ball! The two guards never stood a chance and chased after the ball. The pair race out onto the airfield while the alarms continue blaring and run to the nearest empty planes, which are suspiciously close to the exit. The golden furred guard quickly doffs their uniform hastily. Name's Buddy, mate, and I'll be your retriever for today. Hurry up and hop in. Let's get you out of here. Oh, I had a dialogue option there that I kind of accidentally skipped because I was prematurely pressing the button. Yeah, great. I like the sense of humor. I love the kind of BoJack style of anthropomorphism where the characters are like, they're furries, they generally act like people, and then every so often there's a break in character where they act like a dog and chase a ball. I find that funny. So that was a recurring joke in BoJack that I really, really liked. Okay. Okay, this is feeling pretty cool already. Hey Ace, we gotta take out these buggers before we can make a clean break. Okay. If you get low on ammo or need some repairs, hit up Chuck's fly-through. He ain't cheap, but he does good work. Okay, are we gonna be... So guns are on the front buttons of the pad. It feels a little bit unintuitive just because we're so used to mapping guns onto triggers rather than buttons, so I would have a little think about that. This looks and feels great though. Lovely. I think you've got some sort of like slight desaturating vignette or shader over the game here that wasn't there in the dialogue, and I think if you can make sure that the story kind of conforms to this same color palette, then it's going to make it feel much more coherent. Because there's this slightly kind of grayed out feel to a lot of this, which is a really nice mix because you get the sort of... You get the kind of slightly cutesy feel from the actual art assets themselves, the low poly art assets and the pixel art bits of interface. Feels very kind of N64 Dreamcast. But then the color palette makes it feel a little bit more World War II and a little bit more kind of serious real worldy, and I like the way those elements are playing together. It's kind of cool. I'm over on one side. Am I broken in some way? How do I right myself? I'm just steering weird. That's it. The little gun turrets on top of those airships read like a little face as well, which is quite fun. Like a little Dr. Robotnik guy. Right, I've got a boost resource. I'm just going to play around to try and work out how I use that. ACD. Right, we're going to go through the... Was that a... Okay, I've got my guns on my right and I've got a missile on my left that I haven't been using. I think it would be more intuitive to put them on the back bumpers, but also we've got one of those that zooms in. I see the right stick lets me barrel roll. Oh, that's great. That feels cool. It's a little bit sickening, but that's the whole point of this. You know, kind of vertigo whooshing things around. It's one of like the primary forms of fun that video games do really well and can do better than, you know, board games and stuff like that. Yeah, I'd love to make a flying game one day. And they have interesting design problems just because of the openness. So you have to do a lot with blocking, and I think you've done a good job of that here. Because like the fundamental design no. Yeah, so there's a few fundamental design challenges with flying in games, and one is just like the unbounded openness of everything makes it hard to have interesting constraints. You've got a few things working in your favor here, which is just that because the character has been deployed to defeat the enemy, and the enemy is all low to the ground. Although we could fly up higher. I keep thinking that's some sort of healing thing, but I don't think it is. Although we could fly up higher, we don't have any reason to. And because we're low to the ground, we can have these hills and stuff which block the view. So I feel like the level design is doing some good stuff here. I like the fact that you've gone for, like, if I crash into the water, I just sort of grind along it and take damage, which doesn't make, you know, simulationist sense, but it makes kind of gameplay sense. What's that? Some treasure. My hull is nearly completely gone. I've got 2 more hostiles to beat, though, so I might be alright. Oh, that's cool. Okay. B is dodge roll, but you have to... Yeah, it's not very ergonomic, though, because if you think of where my hands are, I would use my thumb to do B, and then... So it's kind of like I have to hold B with my thumb and then move my left hand from the left stick to the right stick to do the roll. It's a cool move, though. It looks amazing. And I really like the kind of twin stick steering in this. But yeah, I think your button mappings are worth thinking a little bit about. I would suggest we move the gun onto the right trigger and the missile onto the left trigger so that they're in the position we associate with firing. We move the zoom onto the left bumper, so it's just swapped with the left trigger. Right? And then use the right bumper to activate the dodge spin. It's kind of easy to remember mnemonically because then it's above the right stick as well, and we can use our right thumb to do the... Because using B and the stick at the same time, I either have to do B with my thumb. I either have to do B with my thumb and then move my left thumb over to the other stick, which is kind of really awkward, or I have to do a weird claw like this and do B with that finger. And you want to avoid that kind of situation generally. Yeah, I mean, you're going to have custom rebindings anyway, but I think that's the way I would do it. I'm going to... Just 1 second, I need to check if someone at the door needs me to sign. Sorry about that. I had someone come to read our meters. Okay, so yeah, I would do this as... and then fire mode. Oh, you've got it on the... Okay, what was the other thing I was using then? Huh. Not sure what I'm doing with these. Think I've broken it. Yeah, I have broken it. How do I reset it? I'm going to load the defaults back. Yeah, I think that one was the one that I was feeling the most. It does feel strange to have guns and not have them on the triggers, I think. Do I need to come back and land somewhere? Are there any targets left? Oh, you fly through it to heal as well. Oh, I see. That's why. I saw that big healing sign and I was like, this is clearly meant to be something. So I kept flying through it and it was like, no, you need to fly through the hangar. That's cool though. I like that. So it's handled like a kind of check, what's it called? A pit in a racing game. Yeah, the jazz is great. I mean, it's really giving it the Porco Rosso again. We've got the kind of almost slightly serious feeling historical setting. We've got the anthropomorphic animals, and then we've got the gung-ho jazz stuff going on. Right, is there a way I can go back? And closed. How do I get out of here? Yeah, having some issues with using the controller on some of these screens. I'm going to go back and run it again. Because there was like a quick non-story mode, right? I think we had an interesting crossed wires in the chat there, because Maui said you mentioned not being an artist. Where are the artists from? Where's the art from? I think they made the art. I think sometimes people just say I'm not much of an artist. Oh, I meant to click the other option. And sometimes people say they're not much of an artist, but they're trying, you know? I think that kind of comes back to what I was saying earlier. There's a fundamental difference between people that know what their game needs and are going to have a go at it all. You know, I need to learn this type of art, so I'm going to have a go at it, versus people that are just like, but so-and-so says if I use Cinti assets and make an incremental, then I can be a game dev and I don't need to learn these other difficult skills. Okay, so this just allows us to jump through the missions, I think. Defend your Zeppelin from waves of hostiles. I like the concept of this menu, but it's a little bit hard to aim at things. Select your aircraft and loadout. Customize your aircraft too. Excellent. Oh, yes. You let me change the color of something. I'm already like halfway on board from being able to choose the color of something. How do I choose stuff though? What button am I supposed to be using? Something strange is happening with which button is doing selection and stuff on the screen. I see. Hell yeah. Oh, I pressed the wrong button again. Ah! Yeah, which button is kind of accept or go back is kind of confusing me a little bit. Okay, I'm gonna just ignore the controller for a bit then. What you're going to experience a little bit is because the game looks like a console game, people will default to thinking that they should use the controller. That's kind of, I don't know. There are obviously people that never use a controller unless they absolutely have to, and use a controller for everything, even if it seems like a bad choice. But I think the more common thought process will be, what type of game does this look like? Does it look like a controller game? And I think as soon as you're making your game look like a Dreamcast game from 2004, people are gonna make that association, you know. That even if they're playing the game on their PC, it's probably built to be a console game. We can choose the scarf color. Amazing. Mittens munitions store. Okay, we've got some funds. We've got a little bit of money. Leave store. Start mission. I'm not gonna use the debug to give myself loads of money. I might do in a minute when we've played a little bit more. Okay, get out there and hold them off while we get the engines up and running. Right now I'm trying to learn learn how the controls work on the keyboard. I can't turn. Let me just have a look. There we go. That's better. Does feel pretty good though. Feels pretty good. Oh, oh. Oh yeah, if I just want to turn without rolling, I need to use the mouse. That's it. Okay. So fast. It's kind of like your engine keeps getting faster unless you actively slow it down, which takes a little bit of like getting your head around, but it does feel good. I'm having a hard time with the mouse and keyboard, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think it just indicates that the game is going to have like a high skill ceiling, which is something you want in like a driving or flying game. Oh no, that's my Zeppelin, so we don't shoot at that. Guys, can you just not shoot my Zeppelin, please? I definitely found this easier with the controller, so I'm going to switch back. Yeah, you're just going to need to do a lot of... I think the best thing you can do for this kind of stuff is find a local meetup or set one up if you need to, and just do a lot of in-person testing with the controls. Because you need to watch what people actually do with their hands and the weird stuff that they do to... Oh, we're upside down. That's my signature move. It's what they taught me in Skype Up Academy. Always be upside down if you can. It will really freak them out. Can I heal up there? Yeah, I've got a healing point up on the Zeppelin. Let's see if we can get in it. How do I do that? And you've done, I mean, from what I've seen so far, your kind of methodology for building this is exactly what I would encourage people to do, which is to like make some levels that are sort of totally different from each other. Oh no, that's just showing me where my home is. I don't think I have a healing point on this level. Okay. So, you know, you've got an attacking level, you've got a defending level. And And what that means, that's kind of what you would do in the early stages of making a really big game anyway, right? You would feel out the design space and go, okay, we're going to have these 4 types of level, and you would make one of each, and then you go, okay, now we need 40 levels. How do we vary these like 4 formats, and like what's the ratio and stuff? And what you've done here is really sensible, because you can either keep it at the scope it currently is. It's easy to add content later on because you kind of repeat some of the things with variation. But it allows you to kind of feel out the design space by trying out those different types of levels. Who's this? Who's this bozo? So the thing that I've been struggling with... Ah, okay, that's throttle. I see. So yeah, the shoulder buttons are throttle up and down. That's what I was... Yeah, so that's the thing I thought was aim before was actually the speed changing. So I would do... I would put throttle up on the button rather than the trigger. And then I would put the attacks on those, and then I would try and move the maneuver to somewhere else, but I don't know where. I mean, the other thing is you've got the D-pad you can use as a separate thing rather than a replication of one of the joysticks, right, when you're mapping modern controller things. So if you wanted to, you could have a left and right spin on the D-pad as your dodge moves, and then you don't have to press 2 buttons at once. I love that the dodge doesn't... The dodge sort of makes you strafe at the same time. It doesn't just offset you in the same place, and that's kind of nice because it gives it a trade-off. It's not just, oh, have some free iframes and you can't shoot. It's like you can't shoot and you're going to end up in a slightly different place, so you're going to disorient yourself a little bit. And that's what you want. That's what you want in a skill-based game where you want there to be a lot to learn. You want things to have trade-offs. I'm currently working with a team on some freelance work where we're building a combat system, and that's all we're exploring at the moment is trade-offs. So it's like, okay, what does it mean for a hit to be light versus heavy? Is it just one is slow and deals more damage, or are there other factors? Is like does one do more knockback? All of that kind of stuff. Those are all the things that we're experimenting with at the moment, and we're not even at the stage where there's any levels or anything. We're still just kind of doing combat in a grey box. And I think seeing stuff like this, it's very, very promising to see just that little touch of like, oh, when I dodge roll, I don't just like have some free invincibility for a moment and I can't shoot. I also end up in a slightly different position, and that means that I might end up in a worse position and be shooting wrong, or I could do what I just did there and dodge roll into attacking the next enemy, which creates this really cool chain of skills that the player can eventually learn to execute, which is exactly what you want in this. You know, people play a game like this because they want to feel cool. They want to feel like the cool guy who can do cool things. It's baked into the fantasy of the setting as well, you know. This isn't like a flight simulator where we've set it up to be all about the technology of the plane, and then the player is not playing as anyone in particular and they're just immersed in fiddling with the... No, we've set up a fantasy here where we've got a cool hotshot Top Gun lead character, and we want to feel like that. So we want to give the player little things to master that are just based on like kind of creating a cool choreography of the combat as you do it, rather than trying to meticulously simulate a bunch of things. Yeah, I'm not finding the dodge roll too challenging now that I've got... But I am doing the claw. So what I'm finding this happening from a controller ergonomics point of view is instead of pressing the B with my thumb, I'm doing the claw around with my finger, which is what I always ended up doing when I was playing Elden Ring as well. And I think maybe it's a thing to try and design out if you can, because I think when you see someone doing that with their hand on a controller, it's probably a bad sign. But I did it for hundreds of hours in Elden Ring and couldn't remap it, so... There are... The only things that we've encountered in the sky so far have been like these little ships that hover in one place. So everything is very much designed for its function in the game. So we get these sort of mini blimp things to fight. I imagine it would be cool to have a dogfight with another fast ship, but I think it would have to be a rare thing, because it probably just wouldn't support the gameplay that much. I think there's maybe a few little more points of information that could help with communicating the speed, because I kind of keep forgetting I can slow down and speed up. And I think the trail of fire when you're from your damage is one of them, because both levels I've done so far have been damaged enough to be on fire for most of the combat, but the trail of fire doesn't look like it really responds to the speed of the vehicle very much. And I think we could do something with that to make the speed you're going at a little bit more obvious and intuitive. Yeah, I think doing a big chase of one character, like, and the characters are talking to each other like in Star Fox or something, could be really fun, especially if it was through a canyon or something, so it becomes more of a slalom. You know, you've got a boss you're chasing, you're having a dogfight, but they're mostly like just flying away from you, and you're in a canyon and they've got like a really big health bar. Maybe it's a looping canyon that just comes back round on itself, so the level can just keep going until you've defeated them. That would be cool. Got some, what, 5 missiles back. Train heist in a canyon, excellent. Yeah, we'll do that one before the end of the stream. This is great though. I'm really enjoying it. I think if you want to make sure this has a lot of shelf life for people as well, like trying to come up with some system where the game kind of okay, it's 2 of 5 waves, so I'm going to quit out of this now because this is quite a long level. Trying to come up with some system where the game is kind of rating you, and then you can like redo levels for different rankings or stars or whatever, I think is probably a good idea. Okay. Back to the map room. And this time I will do the money cheat. We're going to have... I'm going to put howitzer on the plane. Although, yeah, I mean, the fact that you've got these systems already gives you that kind of replay value, I guess. I bought the stuff, but it's not letting me actually select them, unfortunately. Oh, I needed to leave and then come back. Oh, cool. Oh, I'm gonna be that one. That looks so cool. Okay, try some different guns. Let's go. Alright, Loki mate, a UNAT cargo train is running through this area and we're going to swipe the cargo. Take out their support craft and damage the train's engine to slow it down. All you should have to do is fly close over the cargo and your plane's magnet should engage and pick up the containers. Then all you got to do is get it back to the ZEP in one piece. Get it done before the train leaves and we'll be filthy rich. Good luck. Okay, cool. Got lots of stuff to blow up. Okay, so I've got the howitzers now, which don't do like rapid fire. I have to trigger them manually. Try and preserve my missiles for blowing up the bigger stuff. Where is the train? Choo Choo, where are you, Choo Choo? There it is. Is that it? Yeah. Yeah, Canyon is a great level idea in this just because of the way it interacts with the flying and the needing to get down low and then needing to circle back around. We're probably going to end up doing some loops to... Oh, I've got the... Oh, I see. I'm carrying the train carriage. Okay. Time to go as fast as possible over there? Or do I need to drop it in the... Where are we taking this? Am I taking it here? No, that's just telling me I did see a healing station place over here. Is that where I'm supposed to take them? Supposed to take it in here? Ah! I don't know where I'm supposed to take this. Yeah, I'm boosting there. It's kind of hard to... Let me in! I've got some loot! Ah! Yeah, I don't really know how to achieve the goal of this level, but I like the concept of it and I'm enjoying attempting it. But I don't really know what I'm supposed to do once I've got the thing. Yeah, this is great. I mean, my gut feeling on this whole project is I think you should focus on making this as a relatively small but polished single player game, and then you've got the engine, and then if you want to make a game with multiplayer, you can make that later on, and you can make it as a sequel to this, like a, 18 months later or whatever. Ah, okay, you have to go underneath the Zeppelin and then pop it in. Okay, so I had the right idea. We're going back to our Zeppelin as our base. Okay, let's try one more time. Yeah, it would be wonderful for it to have multiplayer, but it is going to add so much more time on, and this has so much kind of set up to succeed already. And the thing is, if you said to yourself, okay, I'll do multiplayer in the sequel, the time it takes you to develop the sequel is basically just that multiplayer time, and then all of the stuff you might need to do in terms of making new levels won't actually be making new stuff. It will be kind of taking the old levels and sort of switching them around a little bit and putting them in a new story or something, but the amount of time it takes to do those bits is going to be relatively small. Oh! Yeah, I died there. This is great. Yeah, I mean, the link's in the description, folks, so if you're liking the look of this and you want to go and give it a play, please do. I think help refining the controls would be good. I did find moving the speed controls onto the buttons and the gun controls onto the triggers just felt a lot more intuitive to me. It's partly because triggers should be weapons, that's why they are shaped like triggers. But also I've played a few games recently that had like a speed up and slow down on the left and right bumper. So I've got that kind of association even from just playing stuff like Ball X Pit. Oh look, we've got some other pilots. Right, one more try. And then I need to be off. I've got my book to work on. I've got my game to work on. I've got an interview with a local magazine this afternoon. But I don't know how that's going to go. It's always a bit weird doing any kind of media stuff outside of games because you don't know how much you have to explain. A video game is like a fast board game that happens on a television. Guns of Icarus, great. Guns of Icarus is probably in my top 10 it's fun to fail games. And I think Sea of Thieves has a similar thing, but Sea of Thieves to me is just like, you know, Guns of Icarus walked so Sea of Thieves could run. But both of those games, it's so funny to be on a ship when it's going down and you know you're basically past the point of no return and you can't do anything about it. It's just amusing. It's really good. If you really want to keep the kind of jaunty jazz thing, but bring out the feel of the different areas as well, maybe having some sort of like, I don't know, something that sounds a bit Latin for the desert one, I guess. But yeah, the overall creative direction of this, like the kind of Porco Rosso with dogs, the way that fits with the particular sort of early 2000s, low poly, the music, it's all just works really, really well together. You know, the little bits, the little quality of life things like being able to pick the color of the ship. Yeah, let's check out the trailer. That's cool. Really, really like that. Happy to play that again in a couple of months as well. Yeah, if you're in the Discord and you're submitting games via the Patreon form on the playtesting forum, you can submit them more than once. Just, you know, try and leave it a couple of months between and give gaps so that there's actually some different stuff to look at each time. Otherwise, we just end up with pretty much the same stuff. Steal loot from a moving train. I'll do my World War II voices. Customize your planes. Fly into a thing. Cool. Yeah. Get it work. Yeah. I would avoid the multiplayer for now and just focus on polishing the core and set yourself a deadline, get it out on Steam, make sure it works on Steam Deck, make sure it's localized to the countries that you think will most love it at the bare minimum. Feels like it would do well on the Nintendo eShop as well. I mean, who with the Switch and any nostalgia for any of the games people have referenced multiple times here would not want this game on their Switch? Just seems like a obvious fit. Thank you for joining us today. Thanks for sending Iron Dogs in. The first game was called Legacy of Sail. I think, that game has already come out, which is a shame. I don't usually look at games that have already come out, but I'd already scheduled it. Lots of interesting ideas here. The weak areas of this game are in the execution of the interface, the tutorial that rushes us through stuff without allowing us to play it, and it just doesn't feel like it's worth this price point, really. So just more of a reality check there. This feels like a reasonably good hobbyist project where the dev has probably learnt loads of stuff, but if I compare it to other things on the market that let me sail ships around and fire cannons, this is just not $10 worth of game, I think. And I hate to think about things in that way, but that is the problem. Once you've launched something and you've put it out and you've said, this is how much I think this is worth, that gives people a value anchor to kind of compare it against. And this one just feels totally out of touch with what people would be willing to pay $10 for. I'm putting my game in like the $7 bracket, and I feel like my game is quite deep, has quite a lot of care and attention gone into the art and the sound and everything, and is probably going to be playable for like dozens and dozens of hours. And then I see a kind of clunky Cinti Assets game with, an interface that doesn't have any icons in and stuff, and it's asking for like $10 or $12. It just feels like reality check. Reality check needs to happen. This is great. Lots of areas of polish that could be improved on here. I think getting the base controller layout working is going to be key. I think a quick thing I thought of when I was playing with the controllers is the strafe dodge, just map it onto the D-pad left and right instead of having the player have to like hold a button and then roll a thing. That might be a helpful way of doing that. I think anytime you can remove any modal interactions where the player has to hold thing and do other thing is probably a good idea, because you've got all of those buttons for a reason. So you think about when designing, I mean, we can have a talk about it, but Jet, dev of this, feel free to like start a thread about it in the Discord and we can kind of brainstorm it a little bit if people find that helpful. But anytime you're mapping controller buttons for a more kind of console actiony game, you want to think about what would usually be in that space. And some of those things are to do with like ergonomics or associations. Like, for example, shooting a gun is always going to be the trigger in nearly every game. The only time you don't do it that way is when there's like some other really good reason to put it somewhere else, right? So if we're doing Binding of Isaac and we shoot in 4 directions, then it makes sense to use the face buttons for that. But in nearly every other instance, the like physical relationship between that feeling like a trigger of a gun and being our hand is just too strong for it to not be the best choice. But yeah, I mean, you've got enough buttons to do it, and we can always we need some sort of worksheet that's just a big empty grid of all the buttons on a controller, and we can all just fill out what we think would go everywhere, and then you can use that as your starting point. I really like this. I'm happy to see it again in a couple of months. Also, just be kind of mindful of like the balance of story and game. All of the story that I saw looked good, but people aren't going to necessarily want to sit through too much of it before they get to the first level of the campaign. So I think maybe even doing a tutorial that is your main character getting shot down and captured as part of the tutorial, that could be good. And like I said before, it's okay to kill people in the tutorial. It's okay to set people up for failure as long as it's presented as a story moment and then you move on from it. The problem is when people think that they're making Dark Souls and they go, oh, I'm going to kill people in the tutorial, and then they require them to retry that over and over again and not be able to get out of it, which is not actually what Dark Souls ever does. Um, for everyone who is new to the channel, I do 1 or 2 of these a week. The next one is coming up on the 7th, which is Friday. We're going to be looking at Echo Extract, which is a beat 'em up, and Maniqua, which is a defense game, and then kind of proceeding throughout the month, we've got different stuff. If you're a patron, if you're in the Discord, you can submit prototypes before the 17th, and I will slot them into the prototype amnesty happening on the 17th, which is basically anyone who submitted games that are just, jam games or things that I've only spent a little bit of time on. People are always a bit wary about submitting those, but I like to kind of put them together because we can go through them, play each one for 10 minutes, kind of think about what the potential of that game is and stuff like that. If you're not a patron or a member of our Discord, you can submit games over on indiegameclinic.com. It's in the blue panel at the other side of the screen over there. There's a form on there. The games that go on there, I try and get around to them when there's time. I look on there, I pick stuff that I find interesting or that I think will be useful to talk about, and I mix them together. So today, Iron Steel Dogs, was it Steel Dogs? Iron Dogs? Get the name wrong. Iron Dogs was the game submitted by one of our patrons from the Discord, so they would have submitted that a couple of weeks ago. And then the naval game was one that had been submitted by a random member of the public in the last couple of months, and I sort of put them together if they seem like they fit and if they seem like something interesting to look at. I've also something I did yesterday, I updated our merch page, partly because some of you who watch from the UK said you wanted to buy some merch, but the shipping to the UK has been really bad since Brexit, so I switched our merch page to Fourth Wall, and they do shipping from inside the UK and other countries, so I've moved all of our merch over there. If you want to support the channel in some way without necessarily becoming a patron, or you're already a patron and you still want to get some fun stuff, I have a bunch of fun stuff on there. I've redone the Playtesters Tears mug to have the logo on. You can get the Black Metal Ludo Narrative Dissonance hoodie or t-shirt. I had this redone. The version 1, anyone who's got that t-shirt, was done by me, and then I recently commissioned a local artist who does black metal logos to do a new one. This is the kind of stuff I do for our merch. I don't really, no one knows what that logo is, but you can get the Game Dev Hydration Cylinder. That's what I've called it. It's for holding fluids that you put into your mouth. I made a series of bug spotting things. I want to put more. I've got some ideas for some more practical stuff up on here. I want to make a calendar with a set of stickers that comes with it, and you kind of give yourself reward stickers for when you've run a public playtest and stuff on your calendar. But I need to actually do the graphic design for that, so that'll be up there a bit later. And I redid the Live Laugh Lerp stuff. You can get a game dev relaxation candle with Live Laugh Lerp on it now. This is what I spent about an hour yesterday making. I spent a very, very long time looking for a font that was decorative and curly enough to really get the Live Laugh Love spirit, but still legible. Actually quite difficult. So you can get a game dev relaxation candle with the Live Laugh Lerp logo on. You can get a beautiful pink and white trucker hat modeled here by Jeremy Hat Guy. Beautiful. And then when you go to GDC and you have your incredibly obscure game dev joke t-shirt on, you can point at each other and go, you watch that weird guy on YouTube, don't you? And there I am falling out of the sky, which I made in Canva in half an hour, and people will probably tell me is made with AI, because since AI was invented, everyone has forgot how to use Photoshop and has forgot that other people know how to use Photoshop and Canva and stuff. So yeah, that's what I've been up to on my Monday, as well as doing a million other things. And I will be back on Friday to do the next stream. And in the meantime, have a good week and good luck with whatever you're working on. And yeah, have a productive week. And if not, have a chilled out week. And I'll see you all soon.